The Planning Authority has backtracked on a controversial decision to hide objections from the public. A Labour MP has called for more MPs with disabilities in Parliament, and police crack down on pro-lifers in Malta over online hate speech. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo. Welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I am Johnathan, Cilia, joined by Yannick this evening. I hope you're inside. I hope you're warm. It seems like we've got some sporadic rain around the islands. Today we've had some interesting developments on some big stories. We've got Yannick right here to take us away into the first story.
Yeah, so the Planning Authority has backtracked from a decision to hide objections to development applications from the public. So the way the planning process works is that there comes a point in the process where people have the opportunity to object to a development. And this morning, Movement Graffiti flagged how objections had now been removed from the Planning Authority's online system after the implementation of an internal memo basically advising employees to do so. The change obviously elicited a number of strong reactions from activists, the leader of the opposition, basically anyone with an interest in being able to see what objections have been filed to development applications. As we all know, the construction industry and development is quite a controversial subject, and it is very much an important part of the process to be able to know who is objecting. However, the change didn't last too long, with the Planning Authority saying this afternoon that basically this decision had been reversed, and they said that they were the objections submitted to development applications will remain fully available to the public in the interest of transparency. The Planning Authority clarified that the previous decision had been taken on the basis of a possible breach of GDPR, but it said that it had decided to revert the decision to allow more room for discussion. It's interesting to note that our Environment Minister, Arun Farrugia, said he had no idea about the decision. Obviously, it's especially for us as journalists, it's very important to be able to have access to these public documents. So it's a good thing it was reversed.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that Lovin Malta launched the planning web recently. This is exactly the kind of transparency we're talking about. But listen, it's very, for once it's good to see the Planning Authority actually listening to the public backlash. The decision was only up for like 2-3 hours when they decided to backtrack and change it. After, public backlash, you had Movement Graffiti, you had activists, you had journalists calling them out. So it is good to see that they actually listened out, even though it is a bit strange that the Environment Minister said he wasn't aware of this decision. You would imagine that he would be aware of such a big decision, removing a method for people to get more information as far as the construction industry goes in Malta. But, talking about people pointing things out, a Labour MP has said that we need more MPs with disabilities to represent the community within Malta's parliament. So yesterday in a parliamentary speech, Oliver Scicluna, who was the former Disabilities Commissioner, he talked about the gender quota law that's soon going to come into effect in the next election, praising it for being a way, to have more female representation on the island. But then he said, we need to go a step further. What about representation for people with disabilities on the island? He said, quote, that they shouldn't be segregated in life. He said, quote, why are barely any people with disabilities coming forward as candidates? And what is holding them back? So a bit of an interesting, call by Oliver Scicluna here, Should a mechanism be put in place to ensure that, more people with disabilities make it into Parliament?
It's an interesting suggestion, and sort of on the one hand, you'd argue that, if we're going to kind of do it for gender, then why not do it for disabilities? But on the other hand, then it's like, you can't have, a quote and a mechanism for every group within society. His call is obviously one that is a very valid one. Ultimately, the country benefits from having a mixture of ideas and experiences, in deciding laws. I don't know, it's interesting. I won't settle on a position just yet.
Let us know in the comments below what you think about this. Should a mechanism be put in place to allow more people with disabilities to enter Parliament?
On to our next story. The police have called in several individuals over allegations of hate speech aimed at pro-choice PM candidate Emma Portelli Bonnici. So Simon De Bono, the administrator of the popular for Facebook group Abortion in Malta, Not in My Name, warned that there had been a wave of arrests by the police recently. This, he said, had caused the pro-life movement to organize and even crowdfund to assist those questioned by the police with legal fees. Writing in the group, De Bono said that among those questioned was a woman in her 60s who had left a comment telling Portelli Bonici to get lost because the country didn't need people like her. It appears that the woman was called in by the police just moments after her daughter had given birth. And in what was clearly a very emotional experience for this woman, basically De Bono said that the woman burst out crying at the depot, and officers basically ended up apologizing to her and telling her, listen, hey, we were just following orders. De Bono insisted that the woman was doing nothing more than exercising her right to freedom of speech. Obviously, the latest development comes after Portelli Bonici said that she had reported Father Anton Borch to the police for comments calling Hitler a Satanist, a murderer, and a criminal, among other lovely adjectives. De Bono said that the group was crowdfunding the services of a criminal lawyer in case people ended up getting charged in court. He insisted it was clear that those who were in favor of abortion in Malta were free to express themselves as they wish. But this was not the case for pro-life activists.
It seems like in Malta we've got such a love-hate relationship with like brutal online comments. It seems like oftentimes, there'll be a topic that you feel strongly about, you'll open the guns, you'll blast your opponent online, you'll attack how they look, how they are, how their family are, you try and hurt them in any way. And then when people say, hey, that might be hate speech, calm down a bit. They'll just say, oh, I feel really strongly about this topic, this is something I really feel strongly about. No matter how strongly you feel about a topic, if you start attacking the person and not the idea, not the talking point, you've already lost the argument, As soon as you've overstepped that boundary and you've exited, if in this case we're talking about abortion, stick to abortion. Once you're telling a woman to go back to her country or any of these kind of silly statements, you've stepped outside of the argument, you've lost the argument, you're not going to convince anyone. And you might have even broken the law. So be very careful when you're leaving comments online. Whether you're 60 years old or 16 years old, the police will call you in if it's hate speech. Moving on to the next story, a bit of an interesting and a bit of a heartbreaking story coming out of Mater Dei. It turns out that there are 3 corpses that have been left unclaimed within Mater Dei Hospital's mortuary. So this is a very interesting story that TVM actually revealed over the weekend. So these bodies are actually identified. We know who they are. They are 3 elderly Maltese people, but it seems that no one's claimed them. Now, whether that means they have no family left, no friends left, whether the family don't have funds to provide the funeral service. Either way, they have been left behind in the morgue, and a process has begun, a 5-month process referred to as the funeral of the poor, which basically will see the state stepping in if no one retrieves these bodies and putting them, giving them burial, a burial ceremony. I wasn't very aware of what happens. What happens when a body is not claimed and left in the morgue. This is exactly what happens. There's an actual official process where a letter is sent out to any remaining family, then letters are sent to the last address, letters are sent to the parish, eventually a letter is published in the government gazette informing the nation, can anyone claim this body, and if not, they are put to rest.
It's a very, very sad story, and I guess it goes to show that we shouldn't take anything for granted, in the sense that you assume that you'll get a funeral when you die, but not everyone is that lucky. So hopefully this isn't something that many people must go through, but
there was a whole 18 funerals of the poor held in Malta in 2021. So, we've got these 3 bodies now, but 18 in 2021 alone. So a bit more than you'd expect, right?
Definitely. On to our final story, one which is a bit strange, maybe not one you'd hear about every day. The driver of a vehicle has basically ended up in the sea after he claimed that he was following Google Maps. So basically what happened was that the vehicle slipped into the sea at Spinola Bay last night. Footage of the incident shows a car, a Honda Accord, becoming waterlogged and sliding to the end of a ramp in Shat Sayida. The footage shows the driver leaving the vehicle as it slid slowly into the sea. An eyewitness told Lovin Daily that the driver said he had ended up driving into the sea because he was following a route on Google Maps. It seems a bit far-fetched, but you never know. And the police also told Lovin Daily that no one was injured in the incident, and a tow truck was called to remove the vehicle shortly afterwards, and also no public infrastructure was damaged. So at least, I mean, not a hugely sad story. But
No, but listen, I kind of feel for the driver. It's
No,
not the first time you've put in a route, especially if the driver's foreign. We don't know the nationality of the driver, but you put in a route. Google Maps tells you to go left, you go left. Google Maps tells you to go right, you go right. Next thing you know, you're in the sea. So, you know, technology is brilliant, but definitely keep your wits about you. And, you know, if you see water coming in, if you hear the splashing, definitely stop. But what's good to see is, you know, no one was injured in this. And what eyewitnesses on the scene actually said, you know, the driver and the police actually had a bit of a moment of laughter when they kind of talked about this Google Maps thing. So it's good to see that it's not the saddest story, even though I'm sure the car, I'm sure the car didn't end up too well. On that note, both from myself and Yannick, have an evening, as always, full of lovin'.